Hello. It's working. Great. If everyone outside, we can start with the session. Last one. Don't miss out. Okay. Hello, everyone, dear friends, dear colleagues, and dare I even say family. I think we really became a food family this year, so I'm very glad to have you all here in the room for our final session. I think some of us are walking on our last legs, if that's a proper English expression. At least I am, but I'm glad that we're all here today for our final session to give some closing on this year's COP, this year's pavilion, and see where we're heading next year. So today we have set up it's a fairly light touch, not too formal session actually, I think, that I will be co-moderating with my colleague and friend Katie McCoshan from FOLU. And we have put it in 3 panel sessions, after which we have a nice interactive closing with the entire room, so please be prepared. So first we'll go into a panel that will focus a little bit on the highlights of this year's COP, so COP27, what's been going on, what has happened, and Katie will go through that with her panel in a bit. Then secondly, we'll have a panel basically around food and food at COP. So from the start this year, we have been targeting to put food at center stage, put food on the table at COP. And I will have a few panelists joining me in that session to really discuss, like, did we make it happen? Did we really get to that point that food became one of the prominent themes that we wanted to discuss? And then lastly, we have a last session on some views into the near future, next year, COP28. Of course, this year, I think, just a very brief reflection of my own is that this year has been quite positive, but we're not there yet. Next year, there will be another COP in the United Arab Emirates, so we'll also have to look ahead and see what will happen there. So perhaps with that, Katie, I think I can hand over to you to lead us into the first panel discussion.
Thanks, Wiebe, and thank you for all your kind of hard work, not just over these 2 weeks, but you and the whole team throughout the whole year. And we're going to keep this quite informal today. You can see that we've switched to the comfy chairs from outside. Yes, you're welcome. And we really just kind of want to start by, I think, reflecting on what we've achieved this year. And I think we've really built a movement, not just in this pavilion, between these organisations, but between pavilions and kind of in the corridors at COP. I don't want to jump the gun because I imagine it's going to be spoken about later, but even with Coronivia, for example, we've now got almost 100, Jenny? Yeah? Almost 100 signatures on this letter, and I just think that kind of shows what happens when we all mobilise together. And on a panel yesterday, someone said that hope is for losers. I disagree. I think that we've had a lot of hope behind this, and that hope wasn't misguided. There was a lot of effort put behind it, but you need both of those things. And I think this is people's first COP. Hand up if it's your first COP. Yay! Wow, that's quite a lot. Hello? Thank you. I think we're used to this by this time. But yeah, I would love to kind of invite Madlin and Bruce up to the stage to talk to our first panel, reflecting on the highlights from this COP. You can get closer. We've been very close the past 2 weeks. And we're also joined by Vivian online. Hi, Vivian. Thanks for joining us. So, Madlin, I'm going to come to you first to ask you what sticks in your mind as a highlight or marker of progress at this COP, and if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, Madlin Schulte from Infarm, one of the co-hosts of the Food Systems Pavilion. And I really had hoped that we would be sitting here now, celebrating the successful negotiations of the Coronivia Joint Work Programme, but this is okay, here we go again, but this is unfortunately not the case. Our approach of looking at food systems holistically is not really reflected in the final text of Coronivia. And this is so sad for the entire you said family, food systems family to see, because we've pushing so hard for getting our approach integrated into the program. Yesterday, I read a very, well, good summary, let's say, on Twitter by a team member of the Alliance, Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. And I would actually like to read it out, because I think it will resonate with many of you here in the room. We lit a fire for food systems here at COP, and it was burning bright. I can't help but feel that this Coronivia text has thrown a bucket of water over it. And I think this is quite true. This supposedly landmark decision focuses primarily on agriculture alone and does not address so many very critical, relevant elements of food systems. For example, what about mitigation in agriculture? Or what about nutrition and dietary shifts? All this is not reflected in the final text of Coronivia, and that's definitely a shame. And I would say Coronivia has failed in taking a systemic approach in the end. But then again, and you mentioned this now a couple times, I think it was amazing to see the food systems community coming together, working on this open letter to the negotiators. And, well, just overnight, nearly 100 organizations signed that letter. And this is a huge achievement. And maybe Coronivia aside, for a very last comment, I think it was a great achievement that so much space has been given to innovations and technologies in food systems, because I strongly believe that small changes here and there will not get us fast enough to the resilient, equitable food systems that we are all working for so hard and that we want so desperately and also need so desperately. So it was great to see innovators, entrepreneurs take the stage and speak about what they are doing to really transform food systems. So that was fabulous. I think in so many panels, innovators came to stage. And also on to just now praise our Food Systems Pavilion slightly on all the daily demo stages we had. And, well, I think none of us wants to listen to additional panels. But once we've all digested the last 2 weeks, there are recordings of all our sessions available. Just saying.
Thanks, Madlin. I think it's important to reflect on kind of both sides, the kind of what we're disappointed with, but also the kind of the bigger picture as well. And that will lead us to when we talk later on today about what needs to be done next year. Vivian, building on what Madlin said about kind of achievements, what were the top achievements from your perspective in terms of food and land use at this COP?
Thank you very much. And I work with the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, and we are a strategic alliance of philanthropic foundations. I will piggyback on what Madlin has said. It's unfortunate the Coronivia joint work on agriculture did not take a food systems approach. But I'll also add that I'm also excited about the collaboration that has come out of the work. For sure, food systems has been acknowledged by the climate community as being central to climate action because of the work that all of you have done, all of us have done together. More than 3 pavilions on food alone, and hearing the various approaches to solving the climate crisis through food systems was very exciting for me. One of the achievements is the acknowledgement that we need to bring in the people on the ground doing the work, the underrepresented groups. And that's something that, as an alliance, we helped to facilitate, bringing several farmers and also with other partners, bringing several farmers to the table. That in itself helped us as a community to hear the challenges on the ground, but also the solutions that some of them are pioneering. So for me, that was a huge achievement. Another fantastic achievement was a greater acknowledgement that we need to shift from the industrial model of agriculture, which we are currently doing, which is leading food systems to generate more than 33% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So that acknowledgement means we're changing our mindsets and we are planning for a future where we empower the smallholder farmers on the ground rather than consolidate the industrial agriculture. So that for me was an exciting thing. And finally, the increased engagement from philanthropy on food systems and the collaboration amongst them. There were several announcements that were done by philanthropic foundations together. There's a need to dig deeper into that, but the fact that you're having several foundations collaborate together, several partners come together for food systems, for me that's a huge success, and we should continue to build on that. With that said, with this achievement for the future, I think there's an opportunity for us to consolidate. As I said earlier, it was great that food systems was everywhere, but I do believe as we advance the food systems movement, there's room for more collaboration and more cohesion in both the pavilions, but also in the messages that we continue to communicate to the climate community. Over. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vivian. And I really want to pick up on the point on bringing farmers to COP and congratulate the World Farmers Organization for having brought over 100 farmers to this COP. And I hope that we can continue next year to, make that bigger, make it 200, make it 300, because that's a really, really critical voice that we need to make sure that we all celebrate and include. Bruce, I know that GFI set out with a very clear aim for this COP, and would love you to kind of share with the room what it was that you set out to achieve and how you think that went.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thank you, Vibe. And Clim-Eat, I'm glad you asked me a different question, because I don't think, listening to Madlin and Vivian, I think you summed up the incredible work that Clim-Eat did to bring us all together and to work together to herd the cats of all of our organizations and come up with what I thought was just a spectacularly valuable, fascinating, collaborative, but also full spectrum presentation around food systems. I was just ended up incredibly impressed by what you managed to pull off, and I hope you're going to get a couple weeks of sleep, you and the other Clim-Eat organizers on the back end of it. So GFI, what Madlin and Vivian said, the predominant sort of first step, and I feel like we had a phenomenal first step in terms of, 3 different food systems pavilions, just going from last year where there were no food systems pavilions and kind of, not zero of food, but pretty close. Systems are a third of direct emission. On land use are an even bigger part of the solution, the fact that food systems were basically ignored last year, to 3 pavilions and really smart, strategic, fascinating, maybe not comprehensive, but close presentation of both, sort of what's happening on the ground all the way to some of the more higher level. Thank you. And I've loved the technology. So GFI got, definitely it was, I think, because of the support from Clim-Eat and the support from the other co-sponsors and the smartness of the panels and the smartness of the collaborations. We wanted to elevate food. We particularly wanted to elevate and have some conversations around alternative proteins specifically as the food systems analogous solution similar to renewable energy and electric vehicles. I felt like we did that. But even just the amount of conversation around food, the elevation of food, obviously there are some disappointments by final statements, but I think where we got to is a pretty spectacular stepping stone in terms of collaboration and everything else that Madlin and Vivian talked about for next steps going into UAE and beyond.
Thanks so much, Bruce. And just to kind of wrap up this this first panel, I want to ask the three of you what your personal takeaway from this Food Systems Pavilion, this experience at COP has been. Mine has been meeting everyone in person that we were speaking online like 3-4 times a week, more than I ring my mum, and just seeing everyone hang out here is like a very collaborative space. So yeah, would love to hear from the three of you.
So I'm a COP newbie. It was the first COP that I ever attended. So I do not really even know where to start with answering that question. I think the last 2 weeks have been very, very exciting. Just seeing the food systems community coming together. And I cannot really believe that there hasn't been a dedicated space in the last few years, when this year there was not only one food pavilion, but even several food pavilions. So that's huge, definitely. And I mean, I know I'm supposed to concentrate on highlights here, but maybe just one very small point of criticism that can you hear the music online, folks?
Really is a celebration today.
Celebration, but nonetheless, I want to get off one small point of criticism off my chest. I think there has been a bit too much harmony on most of our panels. I really got the feeling if the world were as united on food systems as we have been here in our discussions, we would be much further along. And my conclusion is simply, we do not sufficiently engage with all stakeholders. And we should definitely try not to have all these conversations within a community that is on the same page anyway, but we should, and probably for the next COP at the latest, try to be even more inclusive and try to include maybe also speakers that have not yet embedded food systems thinking into their narratives and into their actions. That would be one of my main outcomes of this COP, being even more diverse and inclusive.
Thanks, Madlin. Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a first step, harmony maybe before, you're not obviously, anyway. I was really, I was thinking when some of the people from Sustainable Beef came to one of our panels, I was thinking they really should have been on the panel rather than in the audience, similar to what you said. And then one of our other panels about preserving nature and biodiversity, and we had somebody who was basically sort of very strongly advocating on behalf of indigenous communities leading the way. And then we had Impossible Foods and we had GFI, and it was a super friendly conversation despite obviously some degree of disagreement, which I thought was great. And I think more of the definitely more of the conversation and figuring out who the voices are that are not on the dais and figuring out if we can get them onto the dais. I think that's a super smart observation.
Thanks both. And we've done the classic thing that we all do is when we start to talk about things personally, we bring it back to the pavilion and our roles. So Vivian, do you want to end on a personal note about your experience of being land use at COP?
Yes, what I'll say is the change sometimes happen in the informal spaces beyond the panels. And that's something I'm so grateful for because I was able to get involved in several dinners, several, not side events, but informal conversations. And at the end of the day, people are the ones that make these decisions. And a lot of the influencing starts in the informal space. So for me, as we continue our work beyond COP, is to give room for those informal spaces. Even the negotiators are humans. And the more we tell them about these principles, about the values, hopefully that will translate into what we want to see for climate action, having and for several governments to take a food systems approach. So it's all about the informal spaces, the informal conversations. And that's something I'll end with. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vivian. Thanks so much, Bruce and Madlin as well.